Hola. Zach Simone, American Studies video, take 1. Operation Breakfast Menu was a covert bombing operation by the United States military that took place from March 18th, 1969 until May 26th, 1970. Now, the targets of these covert bombing operations were outposts of the People's Army of Vietnam as well as the Viet Cong, the two enemies that the United States fought during the Vietnam War. Now, as you can see from this map that I drew myself, the dots represent bombing sites. Here's Vietnam, and here's Cambodia. As you can see, most of the bombings are concentrated along the border of these two countries. Now, to understand the rationale behind the bombings, we must look at the bigger picture of the time. The United States and the Soviet Union were fully enveloped in a conflict that was the Cold War, an arms and technology race that pitted the two world superpowers against one another. This conflict spawned from World War II. During World War II, the United States and the Soviets were allied with one another in order to combat the horrors of fascism and Nazi power. They set aside their ideological differences, but after the war, they had lost their common enemy. This set them up against one another, building up atomic and nuclear weapons in order to fight a new type of war, nuclear annihilation. To prevent the spread of communism in developing countries around the world, the United States used something called the domino theory. Now, this says that if one country in an area falls to the horrors of communism, other surrounding countries will as well. This is partly the reason the United States became involved in Vietnam. After the Korean War, another war against communism, American troops were sent to Vietnam to get out of Korea. Then, the Chinese government that had been allied with the United States throughout World War II collapsed, and the People's Republic of China under Mao, a communist state, was born. By this time, it was too late to pull out of the area for fear of seeming weak to our allies. Excuse me. So, we fought the Vietnam War. Now, back to Operation Breakfast Menu. I know I'm hungry myself. But anyway, these bombings affected many facets of the Cold War. Aside from the sheer destruction that they caused, killing numerous innocent civilians, it allowed, on a positive note, it allowed for American withdrawal of troops from the area, as well as Vietnamization, allowing for the Vietnamese people to take control of their country again, because the United States had been occupying Vietnam for a few years while fighting the war. But also, negatively, it allowed for the Khmer Rouge, a extremist communist political party, which was an offshoot from the Viet Cong, to gain prominence in Cambodia and cause the genocide of millions of Cambodian people. Now, this is supported by a first-hand account by a quote by author William Shawcross. Now, here's the quotation. When Congress, in the summer of 1973, legislated an end to the U.S. military action in, over, or off the shores of Indochina, the only U.S. military activity then going on was air support of friendly Cambodian government and army, desperately defending their country against a North Vietnamese and Khmer Rouge onslaught. What destabilized Cambodia was North Vietnam's occupation of chunks of Cambodian territory from 1965 onwards for use as a military bases from which to launch attacks on the United States and South Vietnamese forces in southern Vietnam. Cambodia's ruler, Prince Sihanouk, complained bitterly to us about North Vietnamese bases in his country and invited us to attack them, which we did from the air in 1969 and 1970. Next came a North Vietnamese attempt to overrun the entire country in March and April of 1970, to which the United States and Southern Vietnamese forces responded by a limited ground incursion at the end of April. Now, this affected the Cold War because it was another instance of communism that the United States had to subdue. Even though Operation Breakfast Menu was a smaller component in the bigger conflict, it still has long-lasting effects today. Now for the credits. Here, we have our sources. First off, my own fabulous cartography skills. Secondly, correspondences with journalist Seymour Hersh, a family friend. His book, The Price of Power, Kissinger in the Nixon White House, gave me much information into this topic. I talked to him through emails as well as dialogues. And finally, an article online, Nixon's Fatal Decision, The Secret Bombing of Cambodia. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a video by Zach Simone.